Images from the Hubble telescope have dazzled us. Its new cousin, the James Webb Space Telescope, is looking even deeper into the cosmos.
And we will have Drew, I guess we'll use the contingency MTL again.
Hubble has cheated death already through repair missions by NASA astronauts. Its orbit, like all unpowered orbiting satellites, is deteriorating. Hubble was designed to orbit about 370 miles above the Earth. The last time the space shuttle and its astronauts visited in 2009, Hubble was 350 miles above Earth. Today, the telescope is just 335 miles above Earth. If nothing is done, Hubble has a 50% chance of re-entering Earth's atmosphere in 2037. Now, it's an unusual source that is offering to boost Hubble's orbit, extending its life for a decade or more. And here is the kicker. They might do it for free or little cost to us taxpayers. It is SpaceX that approached the space agency with the question, how about we reboost the Hubble Space Telescope for you? NASA is interested in SpaceX's proposal. Both announced that they will spend the next 6 months studying whether a possible reboost makes sense and whether such a mission to Hubble could also service the old telescope, which has been working for more than 3 decades now. A service mission means delicately changing out parts. SpaceX is working with Jared Isaacman, the billionaire who flew the first fully private space mission, Inspiration 4. He has a new space company called Polaris, and he thinks its first mission could go to Hubble.
So over the last few years, what we've witnessed is just an impressive pace of progress across the aerospace industry. Pioneering technology like rapidly reusable rockets has really begun to reduce the cost to orbit to such an extent that commercial space missions are now really possible. And alongside NASA, exploration is one of many objectives for the commercial space industry, and probably one of the greatest exploration assets of all time is the Hubble Space Telescope. So while my comments are a bit specific, please remember, this study has broad applicability. But that stated, with James Webb Telescope now online, Hubble's mission has only gained in importance. So it's absolutely exciting to think about the possibility of extending the life and capabilities of one of our greatest explorers. So Polaris is excited to assist in this study, and hopefully it does lead us down a path that ensures Hubble's ability to continue to serve science for decades into the future.
SpaceX and Polaris appear to be offering that deal. They won't be asking taxpayers to flip the entire bill.
We could be taking advantage of, everything that's been developed within the commercial space industry to potentially execute on a mission should the study warrant it, with kind of little or no potential cost to the government, which you would think would be of great benefit to just all of humanity if you can extend the life and capabilities of an asset like Hubble or potentially other assets as more of them are launched into low Earth orbit.
One of our main goals out of the study is going to be to take a closer look at how Dragon can safely rendezvous, dock, boost, and then therefore extend the Hubble Space Telescope operations. We obviously have a lot of experience rendezvous and docking with the International Space Station, so we want to use that as our foundation, but then innovate upon that. Hubble's different. It's in a different orbit, it's a different mass, different vehicle. The detailed proximity operations, that's going to be a little bit different. It'll all be unique to the telescope. And really, we're just looking forward to studying what's possible and what's needed and working all of this in coordination with NASA.
There were 5 missions to repair Hubble. Astronaut Mike Massimino was on the final 2 missions. Hubble has a soft spot in his heart.
We had no doubt in our minds as crew members that what we were doing was worth the risks we were taking in order to provide back the science and the beauty of the universe that the Hubble was able to uncover.
Getting wide field in to unlock the secrets of the universe.
The ones my favorite, though, David, were the early release images. Like we just had James Webb with those early release images. They weren't necessarily the most significant images, but they were the ones that showed we didn't break the telescope. So those are my favorite. But once we knew that was going to be what we thought at that time, we'll see what happens now with the last chance for us to service the telescope. We wanted to do things that were never done before, to take instruments apart in space that we thought never could happen.
So the 2 screws at the top of the handrail came off fine.
Massimino and his colleagues trained for months, but once they started their spacewalk, a problem. A simple handrail needed to be removed to get to some delicate electronics. 3 of the 4 screws came out, the 4th would not.
I don't want to strip the thing.
NASA came up with a solution and tested it. They had Massimino break off the rail.
It's off. Disposal bag, please.
These instruments were not intended to be taken apart, but we did it. The astronaut crew helped invent. The team did it. Of course, the engineers did it. Over 100 new tools for one spacewalk that I was a part of. And when we first started thinking about that, we said, "There's no way you can't. It was never intended to be done in space. You can never do it. Absolutely not." And then we started talking about it, and we figured out a way to do it. And I think it might be like this as well. Now, this is so much different. It's different spacesuits. How do you get stability with foot restraints or whatever you might need, or the robot arm we had? And we had one way of doing it back then. But now I think it's an opportunity for people to be creative and figure out a way to do it with what we have today available to us. And we did put a docking ring on the bottom of this. One of the things we did on the last Hubble mission was we attached a docking ring so that in the future, when Hubble's orbit starts to decay, you could send up an uncrewed vehicle, a rocket motor, to guide it safely through the atmosphere. So there is a way to dock with it.
There is talk of not just the boost, but potentially servicing Hubble. Gyros could be added to it. There's some detection systems, they say, are starting to age a little bit. That's a little different than just hooking onto it and boosting it up. I mean, you worked on this delicate space telescope. What do you think of that element of it as they study this?
Yeah, that's that's a little bit, that's different, because the boost should be pretty straightforward. I mean, that is, you attach to it somehow and give it a good kick and raise its altitude, bring it up to where you need to put it, where you want to put it. And that should be very doable. But yeah, getting out and doing a spacewalk, I'm working on that, is a whole different story. You need to be stable to do that. You have to be really careful, of course. And in that area, one of the things they're talking about is the gyroscopes. That's a really delicate area. I performed a change out of those gyroscopes, which is, I think, maybe the most important thing to change out. But the other underlying factor is always never do any harm. So right now the telescope is working, and on my 2 missions, it was work. So there was a possibility we'd go up there and break something that would put it in a worse condition. The one thing you never want to do is leave the telescope in a worse condition than when you arrived.
NASA has moved to bring in commercial partners into space operations. Many wondered whether that would work. Some have converted, including Massimino.
When I was still with NASA, after we went through these changes and we were phasing out the shuttle program, I was a little skeptical. I think everyone was this going to work out with these private companies doing more and more? So I guess I'm kind of thinking, like, well, let's see what else they can do. And I don't necessarily doubt that almost anything can be done. At first I was like, only NASA can do these things, because that was what we were used to. The way we trained things, the way we operated our vehicles. That's the way we did it at NASA, and they're still doing it that way a lot of the times, and that's a good way to do things. But sometimes people come in with new ideas and with new technology and different aspirations to do things differently, and sometimes it works. And that's what I think we've seen with a lot of these private companies being so successful. So I'm really happy that they're turning their attention to the telescope. And yeah, I'm not doubting that they can't do something great to keep it going. That now that a private company is coming through with this, David, I think for me it means we're in a different phase here than we were when we went back to Hubble. Geez, it was 13 years ago, that final mission, and we talked about it years before that and planned it and so on. So now it's not just the government who's interested in trying to do this, who can do this, but it's also private industry. And I think it's kind of telling that one of the things that they've decided that they would like to try to do is to help Hubble. There's a lot of things you can do on a space flight. If you're a private organization like Jared and his team, SpaceX, you can pretty much choose what you want to do. And I think it's pretty cool that they're choosing to try to help with Hubble. So I do think that they can do this. How they do it, that has to be determined, but I don't see why you can't. I think you just got to be creative about it. And we've been very creative before. I don't see why we can't do that again.
Mike Massimino, always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
Boosting Hubble could mean an additional 10 to 15 years of work. By early April, we may get a sense whether SpaceX and Polaris will travel to Hubble in a private attempt to extend its life. I'm David Curley. That's Full Throttle.